Hi everyone, thanks for joining. Just starting to record. Anul, you can take it.
Okay, so I'll repeat. We built prototype 2 here in Goa. It's made of aluminum sections 20 by 20 and 20 by 40 mostly. We are using aluminum seals with end caps. The zeolite is a lithium X. We've had a significantly better performance with it. At about between 2 to 3 bar pressure on the input side, we are getting consistent 92 to 94% oxygen. Right now at about 7 to 8 LPM because the seals are pretty small at the moment. But I'm sure that once we use bigger seals and slightly higher pressure, we can easily reach 15 LPM at over 90%. So that's the update. The other nice thing with using lithium X is you don't need to use any of the halo components. So all of that goes away. You don't need an equalization valve. You don't need any orifices. All you need is two valves and keep switching between the seals back and forth. So code becomes easy. The construction is much simplified. Less parts on the pneumatics and all of that. So at this point, I think we are becoming more and more committed to that design. It's a significant deviation from the Oxycat in terms of construction and performance as well. But I think it's worth it considering the gains and the benefits we are getting. So anyone else have similar, let's say, experiences to share? I think it's interesting to hear that.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Also, we built a whole bunch of PVC sieves. It's been a bit difficult because number one, the number of parts needed to build a PVC sieve are quite a lot. I mean, you need a lot of things for to build a PVC sieve. You need lots of those couplers and reducers and all of that. And while I'm thinking it may be easy to get those components in standardized dimensions from, let's say Europe or US, in India, it's not that easy. The different brands don't play along too well. So if you take Astral and if you take some other Ajay brand or something, the fittings don't fit each other too well, or either the tolerances are too tight or too loose and so on. And we've had, generally assembling the PVC sieve is quite a task, and a lot of things can go wrong, especially if you end up with, let's say, gluing together a sieve and then you end up with some kind of a leakage. There's no way to fix it or make it better. You just have to essentially throw that whole thing off. So these and other, let's say, issues on the engineering side have kind of made us look at these other alternatives, which I think are much, much more promising and will offset whatever is the price increase in the lithium zeolite itself. The rest of the things become simplified and much better. And we have a much more reliable product for sure. So that's been that on the main zeolite and the main machine side. With moisture separation, I think we are pretty much looking at copper cooling coils with what I think works is multiple smaller compressor heads rather than one large compressor. So instead of having one 2 horsepower compressor which gets like super hot, it might be better to use two smaller 1 horsepower compressors in parallel and reduce or distribute the load. And I think that probably works better. Kind of similar like what the Tata guys did. They used 3 heads. Eventually, I think with lithium, we may not need 3 heads. With 2 heads, you might be able to get a similar performance. So that's that. Moisture capture is still a big issue, and we have to make sure that that is taken care of. I think without that, the machines will not be successful. This week we had a doctor who came and literally pleaded with us. He had a whole bunch of 8 or 10 machines that had recently come from China and came through some charitable organization, and none of them worked. He was pretty desperate. We eventually asked him to just drop 2 machines because we don't have space for all of that big machines here. But of the 2 we received, I think one had a short zeolite, and they're using lithium X as well, but the zeolite was totally gone because of the moisture. So that's going to be a common problem going forward with all concentrators, not just Chinese ones, but even the ones that we make. So moisture control will have to be the topmost priority for us to make sure these machines last longer and are more reliable. So I think that's about that. Is there anything else that I can cover, Vaibhav, based on what we've been doing this week?
No, I think that's pretty much most of it. Now I think it's pretty much a fraction of how to optimize, add more compressors.
Yeah, the other thing with the lithium PSA process is a little bit more, let's say, easier in terms of the timing, in sense it doesn't have to be super precise, or you don't have to fine tune it a lot.
You don't even need the halo.
Yeah, you don't need the halo, and a slightly larger range of timings works equally well. So it's not very super critical on that part as well.
So while you're compromising on a little bit of cost to buy lithium-based zeolite versus sodium-based zeolite, you save up on like half the parts. Like so many parts get reduced.
Yeah.
You don't need the halo, you don't need the orifices, you don't have to worry about the third valve on the top. You don't have to worry about a really big compressor, because all that we're using is about 2 compressors in series and getting
Parallel.
in parallel, and getting a good concentration at decent LPMs as well.
Yeah, coming back to an old joke, those of us in electronics will kind of resonate with this. We can actually read it off a 555 now. A 555 timer is good enough because all we need is 2 solenoids that go on and off. And that's about as simple as it gets in terms of electronics control. But yeah, of course, we still need the sensors and all of that. So that's the other thing that we're working on. I think Vijay has done a great job with the LabVIEW. We absolutely love the work that he's done on that. It has helped us a lot in understanding the sodium process. Also, the original code was pretty much, let's say, difficult to use because it used what are known as delay statements, which are blocking statements for the microcontroller, which means that you can't use it for anything else other than that. So once that we use something like millis, or a different way of using the ISR functions on the microcontroller, we can also integrate the oxygen sensor with it. We can integrate the temperature humidity sensor. We can also add a couple of let's say NTC thermistors to have protective cutoff in case of compressor temperature, for example, and stuff like that. So that frees up a lot of the microcontroller functions for. So I think that's about it. We had a doctor that came and took a look at a machine. He was pretty kind of kicked up about it, gave a lot of valuable feedback. He was pretty positive, and he was from the Defense Forces. He was a naval doctor, in fact. So his feedback kind of really helped us a lot in understanding what needs to be done for the future.
Yeah, that's a good point. We're actually this time doing it a little differently by inviting the doctors to the lab, which is you need to be very careful if you're doing that. Take all the safety precautions as possible, but at the same time, it's a better way to do it because I think we're able to show them what we're doing and not just take the device to them. So
yeah, I mean, instead of us going to the hospital and risking ourselves and everyone else there, and like being in an environment which is not safe for everyone, it's probably easier if one doctor comes and visits your lab rather than a bunch of you take the whole machine there and then hope that Murphy's Law doesn't affect you and everything goes right and stuff like that.
Murphy's Law affected us pretty hard this morning. We had 2 pipe blow-ups right in middle of, right in front of the dock, and we were like, "What is going on?" Everything was fine yesterday, and now all the pipes are just leaking and shooting out. But luckily, he was patient enough, and after some time, everything worked out very well.
Yeah. Also, in other news, we have received Maxtech.
Oh yeah.
Oxygen analyzer. It's a division of Fluke, one of the best instrumentation you can buy. It's cost us quite a bit, and we're kind of proud that we have this awesome piece of instrumentation with us. It's like super awesome to have this.
So the good thing is it's NIST certified, so that means that what readings we're getting out of this are pretty solid. So that means that if we, this can be used by a few, all of us in a way that if we validate our readings with this, it sort of is a gold standard, honestly, in the industry, in the world for testing for oxygen. So if we have a reading from this, that means that we're sorted.
Okay, I think we're looking forward to updates from Vijay. Vijay, you are up next. I mean, you've been doing a ton of stuff, so let's hear of what progress you've made
I think
and how
Sri,
things are.
Sri wants to say something. Sri, you want to just quickly go ahead before Vijay?
Yep.
Yeah, yes, good evening, you gentlemen. Two things I want to ask you. One is that visit to the doctor, very good input from you. Did he talk about what are the LPMs and what are the flow outcomes to be coming out of that instrument?
important. So he said, I mean, don't aim for 25 at all. I mean, up to 15 LPM is all that you should attempt. Anything more than that, you need more severe intervention and stuff like that. The case is really very serious if anyone needs more than 15 LPM.
Then you go to liquid oxygen, actually, literally.
Probably, I'm not too sure, but yeah, the point was that let's stick to 15 LPM. That's more than sufficient. If you can achieve that with your machines, that's what we're looking for. That's what we need.
Okay, that's the input doctors generally give. What is the input and the outputs actually? Basically, inside the machine, they won't be concerned about what's the output is, what is the.
At the end of the day, they want that oxygen at that LPM. That's the only thing.
Yes, and how consistently it is coming.
Exactly.
The other question which I want to address to you, ask you is the moisture control actually. Okay. I have been going through a lot of posts which have been coming actually.
Right.
My simple submission to you is moisture control, the best output you can get it with a hybrid of desiccant, I mean with regeneration, and probably with refrigerant type, you know.
Right.
The cheapest refrigerant hack you can do is with just a water dispenser, you know, which has hot and cold. That's a very compact unit. And some gentleman put up in this thing that he used a cooling coil. You just put the refrigerant to that, either to the coaxial one or to this, and you pass the dry air. You get clean dry air anywhere in the country.
Absolutely. I think that's a great suggestion. A couple of the teams are working on it, so we're waiting.
Yes. And I think that's a positive outcome actually. And I think some amount of that will help us to that to reach to such that objective actually. Another aspect of this oxygen sensor which you have brought up right now, that make is good, but is it just connecting the outlet to this, or is there any free end and all those things which we discussed, pressure building up or concentration getting a little bit reading?
Okay, so here's the thing. All of these sensors require a certain amount of
pressure. Bleed air, you mean to say?
Yeah, bleed air. So essentially the way you we do it is after the low pressure regulator, which is where the oxygen is coming from the surge tank.
Yes.
We have one output that goes through the regular flow meter, which is like up to 15 LPM or whatever.
Yes.
There is an additional T, which then feeds to a needle valve, which in turn is where the oxygen sensor is connected. So the oxygen sensor gets about 1/10 of the output, actually even less than that, about 100 ml or something is more than enough.
As long as the feed into the oxygen concentrator sensor is as much as it's only required as per specification, I think whether it's free end or no end, it doesn't matter actually, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. It needs to be the bare minimum. So we don't need to pass a lot of O2 through the sensor per se to make it.
And two positive aspects which you also mentioned was about the alarms for the compressor cutouts and things like that, and the microprocessor controls. And two things which I always believe is on the safety part of it, or the monitoring part of it is the humidity control, which you said you can look at it something, or the temperature, whatever, you know, ambient, which you can record it with some small LED things, you know. I am not so much of an electronic expert, but something that can be.
We have Vivian here today. He'll give us an update. We are also working on a controller board, which will mostly use off-the-shelf components or modules that you can plug in. And this will be a much more comprehensive controller for the concentrator. So maybe we have a couple of hands going up, but
okay, I will not take more of your time. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Appreciate for clarifying a lot of thoughts actually. Appreciate. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Vivian, up next.
Yeah, hi, hi everybody. I think Vijay wanted to speak.
Okay,
Right?
let's get to Vijay because he made a lot of progress and he's
Yeah, I will raise my hand after.
badass mic with in front of him and it's
Yeah.
like all set up. So
Go, Vijay. Give us
Yeah.
some good news. What's happening?
yeah,
Awesome, guys. I mean, I'm glad that LabVIEW is helping out a lot more people and helping testing systems. So again, there's a lot of information that I'm in middle of, so I'm just trying to put out points out here. Starting with lithium, again, since we started out with that discussion, I agree with Anul 100%. I think that is the way. Lithium is the way to go for the future. Ultimately, again, even though I am getting 96% plus at 15 to 20 LPM, ultimately my sieve pressures are around 4 to 5 bars, which is a little scary. And I need this huge compressor.
Yeah,
It's great to show, and probably we'll make a lot of noise tomorrow once the M19 logo is M1902 logo is done and put on the machine. We'll make a little video and noise about that. But other than that, I don't think this is something that is really scalable.
yeah.
So lithium is the way to go for sure, 100%. You need a smaller compressor. You need lesser amount of zeolite. It's more manageable, more of a actual product that you can make out of it, not a huge little machine. When it comes down to zeolite, the supply chain though. So from what I'm hearing, the 0.2, 0.4, 0.8. This is the general range of zeolite that is used in the small little oxygen concentrators. But there's a global shortage of the supply chain, which is only, again, people are ramping up, but it's going to take a few months for you to sort of get your hands on a reliable supply of lithium X with again that particular bead size.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm not too sure how much to believe this information, but it supposedly comes from somebody who's asked the companies and all that the guys in China are also recalibrating their machines to use 1 to 1.4, 1.5 lithium X beads, which again is available in large quantities at a reasonable price. I think it's 2,000 to 3,000 rupees again landing in India for per kg for the 1 to 1.5. So I'm wondering if sort of again by increasing the compressor pressure slightly, you can sort of compensate for the larger bead size.
Another thing that we sort of noticed with some of the Chinese compressors was how tightly they packed the zeolite, the lithium-based zeolite. It was really, really tightly packed, like almost at the point where humanly not possible to tighten it. So I'm guessing
Yeah, I think that's an important factor because the more tightly you pack it, the less, the more chance for the air to get absorbed with nitrogen and stuff like that. So we'll have to figure out a good way of getting those compressions that we are getting.
Yeah,
I agree. I think even when it comes down to the sodium zeolite, right, it takes quite a number of people to open and close one sieve.
Yeah.
We sort of stuffed it on one end with the Scotch-Brite,
Yeah.
and
So-
it's really difficult to close.
So everyone who's struggling with 50-60% concentration with sodium X, I think most likely the problem can be pinned down to very low compression of the sieve. I think that could be one of the major factors to take care of here.
yeah, because another thing that we noticed with the Chinese compressors, right, or the Chinese concentrators, is that it has a very, very small motor, only I think less
About
than
half a horsepower.
half a horsepower or so.
Yeah.
And it's cracking 10 LPM easy, at least on the oxygen, what do you call, flow meter that they've used. Maybe the trick is in the flow meter, I don't know. But if the trick is not in the flow meter and that flow meter is accurate, which
But
I
it's
want to
easily
test,
doing 94%.
but it's doing 94% at 10 LPM.
Yeah.
So which is pretty solid, like 92, 93% at 10 LPM. And the way it's getting that is through a half horsepower motor. It's like a tiny little motor inside, hardly makes any noise, nothing, not too much pressure. So that's pretty good. And they're not even using pneumatic fittings. They're just using pipes stuck into holes and zip tied, which is also quite interesting because that's another way to possibly reduce a lot of cost eventually when dealing with
They've done a
manufacturing.
lot of cost cutting. Like the cooling coil is a short piece of aluminum circular pipe. It's of course conical, as you've seen. That's a good performance, but it's made out of aluminum. There's another cooling coil in series. They output oxygen, which is also a coil of aluminum. So
Actually, we should do another video on how to fix a Chinese air compressor.
yeah. I think the only
That might help a lot of
shortcoming-
people.
The only shortcoming they have is that they have no way of moisture control, which is what is killing all of them.
Yeah, they're coming in dying. Literally all of
yeah.
them. Like this guy has 100 of them in Goa, and he came over here, the doctor. The good thing is it's on record, and we'll release that video as well. But he got 6 oxygen concentrators with him. He said he had 100 more in his hospital, and all of them have the same error, ER02, which is oxygen concentration below the required amount. And that's because the zeolite is short. And
Yeah.
that's what we saw. We took out the zeolites, we tested out the machine, the zeolites were short completely.
So I think it'll be a nice side project if we can actually come out with an M1902 moisture separation unit for high flow rate for these concentrators, because that can actually help a lot of cases for sure.
Yeah, that way we can fix a lot of devices.
So whoever's working on the chiller, I think Korba, whoever else is doing it, please keep your efforts on. Let's get some results with these chiller units. I think that looks very, very promising.
Did you guys try and recharging the zeolite, the heating and vacuum thing?
No, we haven't.
Yeah, I want to understand that a little bit better from you. If there is a way, I mean, it's the same process for the lithium-based zeolite. It won't catch fire or anything. It's a lithium at the end of the day.
I'm hoping again. I've just been, because I don't have lithium on my hand. I mean, I would have loved to try that out. So I think one again from your thing of packing. I think the packing of the sieve is like paramount. Making sure it's really tight there. I mean, we sort of set up a SOP where we are under. So once, even after it's packed, we will vacuum it to make sure like it's really, really packed. There's no air gap in between at all. When it comes down to moisture, this thing, right? Again, today, so last 2 days, we were testing continuously, again, stopping it, leaving the machine overnight, coming back in the morning, restarting it again, instantly goes back to 95, 96%. Today, since we were working on the machine, the paneling and all, we had removed the sieves and they were out the entire day. And when we kept it back, they were not performing that well. So again, somebody actually told me this, when you leave the sieves open, right, because of the zeolite, it actually creates a vacuum and starts pulling in air from the outside.
Okay.
So you need to sort of keep your inputs and outputs of the sieve tank sealed when you're storing.
One easy way to do that is just interconnect all of them together.
Yeah, actually that makes sense. Yeah, actually, why that makes so much sense. You just connect the pipe. Yeah, 100%. And a quick fix for that. It was surprising how easy this was. We just like 5 minutes on each side. We blocked one end, put a vacuum pump on it for both the sieves for 5 minutes on either side, 20 minutes in total. Again, no other changes in parameters. Ran the system again back to 95, 96%. So that was like
the shit out of it, is it?
But how long does it last is the other question. Your performance.
Consistent. So as long as machine is running, right? I ran. I think totally I would have ran it about moti 9-10 hours so far. Again throughout the week. As long as my sieves are not exposed to like ambient air for again, even when the machine is off, it's fine. I shouldn't disconnect it from the circuit. That is when it really sort of like drops drastically. But I've left the machine overnight, come back in the morning, ran it again, no issues. Again, possibly over time, air might go in from the from where the 3x2 valves are releasing air. Yeah. Possibly again over a week or two. Again, it's the same thing might happen. But again, if you're running it consistently, I think sort of the PSA process itself sort of pushes out the excess moisture is what I am thinking is happening.
Okay, one of the other things we need to look at if someone has insight on it is if they can use some kind of HEPA filters for the input of the compressor, because that's what is eventually reaching the patient. So after it passes through all of the zeolite and stuff. So one is what goes on the input to the compressor, and then finally we need a HEPA on the output as well, which of course is obvious, but I think an input HEPA filter might help. Okay, Vivian, waiting to hear from you. What's the update on the controller board and other updates from your side?
Hi. At the moment, I have finished the schematic completely. I added the additional sensors for the temperature monitoring as well.
Awesome.
So from your last feedback, which after speaking to the doctor about like the display to show the photo concentration and the flow rate and all that,
Right.
the design we had taken into there's a 1.3-inch OLED display, so which I mounted at the back of the board. So so you can have the whole thing in the front.
Right.
You can see it from the front of the unit. So that was the idea. But when I look at it, I think a 1.3-inch would be too small to on such a big machine. I saw the machine which Vijay posted today.
Yeah.
So it's like a pretty big machine, and this 1.3-inch display would be like almost unnoticeable on a machine like that.
Right. So I think you suggested 2.4, and I agree. I think that's the biggest size we can get locally.
Yeah, 2.4-inch TFT.
Yeah. Do they have different drivers, or is the driver the same on the hardware you said?
Yeah, see, normally for all these displays, you normally use an Adafruit library,
Okay, fine, perfect.
so which works without a problem for everything. But only thing is, I have to see because normally a TFT display uses data pins rather than I2C.
Got you.
So that might take up a few pins. So if it is interfering with our existing scheme, then we might have to look at some other way of doing it.
Yeah, but the 2.4s are available in OLED with I2C, right?
I've seen it, but it's kind of a little expensive. It comes to around $20 for 2.4-inch.
Okay, I think we saw some local pricing that was much less, but anyway, let's see what we can get.
Okay. And the other thing is regarding the manufacturing of the PCB itself.
Right.
So the idea is we do a centralized manufacturing for the PCB everywhere.
Right.
Is that fine, or is it to be?
So that's fine as long as there are some elements that are modular in nature on the board, right? Those can be left unpopulated, so people can just get their own units and put them. Does that make sense?
Okay. See, what I did was I kept a 30-pin header like the Raspberry Pi.
Yeah.
So once which is there on the board. Now,
Okay.
in case any modification needs to be done, we can actually make kind of a smaller board which will plug into that header pin, and you can use any other devices on top of it.
Perfect. That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. But I think we would also want to run a prototype version before we go big, right? So
Yeah, the PCB will be ready. The design will be ready today. Today by tomorrow maximum. Then we will send it to JLPCB for the prototype board. 5 numbers we are trying to get from them.
They're not going to collect your laptop.
With the SMD assembled on board. So that way it will be much better.
Tata said he'll go there.
okay.
When he
All right. So for the PCB, once it's ready, just sit on it for a day or so we can look at it, because I find that good practice to kind of let it soak for a day so that you don't have any last minute ideas that you kind of rush through. And
Yeah, sure.
so let's have it all ready. We'll kind of look at it, and I think then a couple of boards or JLC PCB would be, I think, a good way to go.
In the meantime, we are also doing a simulation of the whole thing on Proteus.
Okay.
So at least we know that everything is working. But the problem is Proteus can't use ESP32. So instead of that, we are putting a nano and then doing the simulation, which is fine because that doesn't matter for us.
Okay, and all of the parts put on the board are part of the JLC PCB library, right?
Yeah, that's what we did. That's exactly what we did. That's what actually we are doing at the moment. We are replacing all the components with their libraries.
Yeah. Yeah, because that makes things really cheap and easy for us as well. As long as you use standard library parts.
Yeah, correct. Okay.
Okay, that's that from your side. We know you had something to say.
Yeah, regarding the PCB, I just want to know whether an option for a pressure sensor is already available.
So not directly, but I think hopefully all pressure sensors will have an I2C interface. So should be easy to integrate with the bus. but otherwise all of the unused pins are exposed on a header. So, but yeah, I think it's a good idea.
What I have done on the board is I have kept 3 connectors for I2C. Apart from one for the oxygen sensor, and also on board I have put in a BME 280 board which measures temperature, humidity, and atmospheric pressure.
Yeah.
So that also is on I2C. But apart from that, we have put in the SparkFun Quick Connect system, two of them, and one additional for the oxygen sensor.
Yeah, and I think there's also the serial bus and the SPI bus exposed. So that's also there, right?
Yeah, correct.
Yep. But I think coming back to pressure sensing, it would be a good idea to have a pressure sensor for, at least the compressor overpressure failure indication if required. And maybe
the pressure sensors which I looked at, they are again having like a millivolt to volt outputs. That is not a digital ones.
Oh, okay.
Again from Honeywell.
Mm-hmm.
So like 0.4 volt, we get either amplified or unamplified output. Both the models are there, and it is coming in different pressure ranges.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I've used a couple in the past. I can't remember the brand right now. It was for a medical device I had made a year or two back, but I can look it up and see. But those are all digital I2C interfaces. So, and I remember that company had a lot of range, so we can look into that for sure.
And one more thing to add.
Can somehow, have a digital measurement of the airflow, the oxygen flow. I think that would make really a well-rounded controller. Any thoughts from anyone on that?
Anul, in the engineering group, somebody had actually shared, and the electronics group, somebody had shared a sensor with a built-in flow meter, an oxygen sensor with a built-in flow meter. It was an ultrasonic.
The Gasboard 7500 or something like that.
Yeah. Any chance of getting that? Because I think that would make a better sense, because you don't have to control the oxygen flow through that.
Right. I think the limitation in that was the flow rate. It was limited to some 5 or 10 LPM, but we should look at.
If I'm not wrong, it was around 50. It could go up to 50.
No, the sensing was 10 LPM max for 7500.
Okay.
Yeah, these are the ultrasonic sensors, so they can do flow as well as concentration. But
and it had a UART interface as well.
Yeah, so that again makes it easy to interface. But indeed, yeah, I think if someone has the time to look into it, it would be nice to know what kind of options we have on measurement of flow as well.
Okay.
Yeah, and other than that, on the alarm paths, whether we have a backup battery or any supercapacitor added in the circuit, so like when a power failure happens.
Yeah, we thought of adding an I2C, but the thing is it adds up to cost. But since we already have a lot of spare I2C interface connectors, adding a external module should be pretty straightforward again.
Okay, for the power fail alarms also.
Power fail alarm.
So we need a backup battery, and it should be rechargeable. So mostly lithium ion or a supercapacitor, something has to be brought in.
For the electronics or for the entire system?
Entire system. Once the power fails also, again, an alarm should be coming up that the power is not there to the...
Pressure takes a lot of power. So you can't...
I think what Vinod's meaning is for the electronics.
Yeah, for the electronics.
Okay, for the electronics, it's not a bad idea, because then at least the pressure is not kept inside the walls or in the seals.
Okay, can I suggest something?
Yeah.
See, there is a power supply from Meanwell, which you can add a 12-volt battery to it.
Oh, that's interesting.
So what happens is it generates 12 or 24-volt output. And depending on, if it's a 24-volt, you add 2 lead acid batteries. If it's 12 volts, so you add 1 battery. So anyway, we need a power supply for the input,
Okay.
the mains input, the power input for the board. So if you use this, I think it should work.
Okay, that's interesting. If you have a link or something, please share it out. So
Yeah,
we can-
definitely. I'll send the data sheet of that.
the main issue should be availability. If the thing is unobtainium, then it's kind of difficult to have even the data sheet. So
Okay, because I have used these power supplies in my projects over here, in other projects, engineering projects. So it's straightforward and very easy to use.
okay, that would make a lot of sense. But yeah, coming back to, in case of power failure, we need a safe way to release all the pressure in the system.
Yes, so if there's a backup for the controller board itself, then we also need to monitor the input power, the mains power, so that we make sure that in case of a mains failure, we shut down the outputs, release the pressure and all that.
Yeah.
One more point, like if someone is building the system which are like a bigger O2 surge tank, then even if the power fails, it can supply for another 5 to 10 minutes. So shutting down may not be of the full system may not be a right solution, is what I think.
Not too sure how. Well, we'll have to try it out, really. That's all I can say at this point. Anyhow, a couple of people have hands up, so let's get to them. Priyank has been up for a while, so Priyank, go ahead.
I have a couple of inputs. One thing, I searched for good OLED panels, and getting a good OLED panel, bigger OLED panel is very difficult. I'm trying to make I'm trying to do that, we have multiple OLED panels, and doing that, I'm not able to get it because all of them have same I2C address. So is it possible or not? I'm not very good at it, but yeah, getting a bigger OLED is more difficult than having multiple OLEDs, because OLED is very cheap, very cheaply available. That is one thing from my side. I tried doing that and I was not able to procure it.
Changing the I2C address, I'm not too sure if it's hard coded or not. So maybe someone who's used them might probably know. Vivian, you have any insight on that?
Changing the I2C for the OLED, it is possible because normally it's a resistor which is put on the board itself.
Okay, so you can pull it up or pull it down, so you can have at least two.
Normally, you can do up to 4 addresses on one board.
Oh, nice. Okay. All right.
So I guess that would be a good option, because smaller OLEDs are only available for 150 or 180 rupees in the local market.
0.96 inch. That is like really small.
0.96 inch, yeah.
Very small.
So one measurement over there. That's just the O2 concentration is measured over there. One is just measuring something else. So maybe 4 displays in line, because that is more cheaper, I feel. Because I search for Amazon, Flipkart, even Element 14 and everywhere. In India, it's very difficult. I'm not sure about other places, but in India, getting a 2.4 inch OLED is very difficult.
No, because even when I searched, I only found it on eBay. That's the reason why I said that also.
So there are available in 5 inches, but they are used Samsung ones, the old Samsung ones. They are not they are not readily available. It's like removed from phones and stuff like that.
Yeah, but they are not on I2C bus again.
Yeah, that's what.
So that's a problem.
So I guess this is a good option if you want to go ahead with a multiple display.
Anyway, it's doable without any engineering changes as of now. I mean, you can just add more displays. Shouldn't be an issue. So.
And Second thing, there is a kit named as eVive. It is an education purpose. It has been repurposed from an Arduino Mega with Zigbee and breadboard on top. We can do something like that. There is a small kind of breadboard with maybe 10 or 12 pins. And we can, for further prototyping, if you want to add something or somebody wants to add something else, so that is already open to all. And it has a couple of.
So Vivian's design already has all the headers available for exposure. So you can add any kind of expansion you want to it.
So, see, what I can do is, once the main board work is done, I will also design a kind of a perf board, which can fit into this header, and you can assemble whatever components you want on that.
That's ideal. Perfect. All right, let's quickly move on. Simran has something to say, so let's hear from her. And then maybe
Kim,
Vijay.
hi everyone. So we're also working on oxygen concentrator. And basically just want to ask you about your pneumatic circuit. Like, is it exactly what Oxykit has given in terms of like are you using the orifices with
Okay, is
no
that
changes?
a question generally or to us here at Goa?
Specifically to make us silent, because you guys are getting the 95%. So we tried that, and we're just facing a bunch of issues with.
So the update from our side is we built the Oxykit as it is exactly, and it did really work. Quite frankly, I think the maximum we reached was about 70, 75 with great difficulty. Vijay has had slightly more success in Bangalore, but we tried building extra sieves and none of it worked. As of now, the one that works for us is Lithium X with a totally different design from what Oxykit uses. We don't have the
Okay.
halo, we don't have the orifices, we don't have the equalization valve. All of that is gone.
Yeah, we've simplified design quite a bit, and the entire pneumatics are way lesser and simpler.
Yeah.
Vijay, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so I think when it comes on a debugging list, right? If you are not getting output, I think in the order of priority, one, make sure that your zeolite is not moist and not short. Heat it up under vacuum to do that. Second, make sure that you have a moisture separator in your circuit that is not there.
Hold on, I'll just stop you there. Like we did get, okay, so we don't have these issues. We worked on the moisture and we worked on even the zeolite. All of that is working. So
What's the
I
pressure you're
find
working
you
at?
to-
What's
Sorry,
your
what?
what's your sieve pressure?
Our sieve pressure is around 25 psi.
How much is that? Bar? 2 bar roughly?
Yeah, 2 bar.
I think it needs to be higher.
Much higher.
So
I am
we're-
going at around
hold on.
4 to 5 bar to get.
We are using lithium. We are using a lithium-based zeolite, so we're not using.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's
What's
why
the grain size?
What's the grain size? What's the quantity?
it's JLX 101. From the supplier. So we-
0.81.
Yes. Yes.
I have a feeling that
2.8 that one. So we are using like a good zeolite. Let me just explain the whole issue. So with the circuit for Oxykit, even we had a lot of issues. We made it like exactly as per the specifications, but even we maxed out with different timings up to I think 75%. For some reason, we weren't getting the whole pressure swing between our sieves. So what I mean by that is when the sieve depressurizes, it never gets to zero all the way. And that was one issue. So what we did today and what something finally worked is we used this a little bit more complicated circuit, which we found of a YouTube video for a concentrator, which uses up to like 8 separate valves.
Wow.
And with that, we were able to get to 94%, 95% with the same zeolite we've been using earlier. So we know it's not a moisture issue. We know it's not like the zeolite issue. So we were wondering whether you guys have made any modifications to your Oxykit thing. So can you share your pneumatic circuit? Like what has worked for you?
Our pneumatic with the Lithium X is pretty straightforward. There's just 2 valves that control the air going into the 2 sieves, and they're just being switched back and forth. That's all.
So we tried that. We tried something simple like that too, and we just never like it won't even cross 50% with that sort of
That's all.
simple thing.
So tomorrow today we shot 2 videos. One was on the safety, and the second was on the sieves, how to pack the sieves, especially the aluminum sieves, and what we've done. And tomorrow we'll be shooting a video of our pneumatic circuit and the entire overview, and then after that the electronics. So we'll be releasing all these videos along with all the documentation, the new bomb, and everything. Hopefully by tomorrow, day after. Yeah.
Okay. So Simran, maybe if you share some of your, let's say, details on engineering or somewhere, then we can have many heads look at it and see what could be done to improve your system. But at our end, our system with Lithium X is pretty straightforward and simple.
Okay. Yeah, that's what we just wanted to ask because Yeah, we will do it on the engineering group as well. But main thing I want to ask you guys is
So
if you
again,
have just worked with oxygen, and
one
it seems like you haven't. So that's at least good for us because we can't get it to work.
Yeah, one thing we
Okay.
noticed with lithium and sodium both is, of course, pressure is highly important. So it doesn't work with low pressures. You have to have fairly high pressures for it to do any kind of adsorption.
Right, but
What are
that
the
was
pressures
more
that you are
concerned with
using for
sodium,
lithium?
right? Sorry, what?
The pressures that you folks at Maker Asylum, what are the pressures that you need to go to for?
So with the lithium at the input end, we are going between 2 to 3 bar.
And the sieve pressures?
Not monitoring at all. We removed all of those gauges. So all of that is gone. The whole halo is completely out.
Okay.
There's nothing over there except the two sieve outputs directly going to the surge tank.
Our surge tank is really small. It's only like 300-400 ml. We want to increase that a tiny bit more, but
Yeah.
let's see. But now we're not getting any fluctuation in readings. So earlier we were getting a lot of fluctuations in like the OT readings and stuff, but now it's like been constant. So we top out at about 93% now.
Yeah, but that was, I think, because of the incorrect sensor connection. So
Yeah.
that really helped us there.
94% is what we're getting consistently.
All right,
Which
so
we're pretty happy with, I guess, right now.
We have Priyank, Sri, Vinod, and Simran all with their hands up. Is it from your earlier steps, or do you still want to add something?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Who else is there? Abhimanyu, you have some updates. Let us know.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead.
About the pneumatic design. So I came across the IAC design also. I can share that design. These people are using 5 different timings, 4 different set of timings for cycle A and for cycle B.
Wow, that's complicated. What is ISA?
IAC, Bangalore.
Ah, okay. Okay, all right, got you. Yeah, it'll be interesting. Share the schematic or something so we can figure out what's happening with it. Does it really have to be that complicated? Does anyone know if IISc is using lithium or sodium? Anyone's got a insight on that?
Yes, I will look it up and let you know. Like,
Ah.
and they have built
99% they're using sodium.
Which institute? Okay.
Also, one more thing about the did the doctor tell about the safety precaution at the end when the air is getting out? Did he tell something about using a HEPA filter out there to prevent bacteria or black fungus or anything of that sort?
Well, the HEPA filter goes without saying. I think it is absolutely imperative that we have one for sure. Even if the doctor
At the outlet. At the outlet.
Yes, at the outlet. Even if the doctor didn't tell us, I think we should have definitely a HEPA filter at the outlet.
We can check it
Beyond that, for the black fungus, I'm not really sure what or how it needs to be done. It's mainly an issue with the bubbler unit or the humidifier unit that is being used.
So a quick solution is that we can come up with the closed system, wherein like if you guys are selling this to villages and to areas where people don't have a distilled water. So all the water that we are getting from the FR and all that, that is pretty much better than the tap water. And if possible, we could use that in the humidifier.
Well, interesting, but I'm not sure we are at a stage where we want to really worry about that problem until we reach that bridge. So interesting to keep in mind for sure. But let's first get the main issues sorted out.
Also, one last thing. The analyzer that you got, what type of analyzer is that?
Oh, well, it's an electrochemical sensor for sure. So
yeah,
it has its own limited lifespan.
So what I was trying to tell is that like we should use like Kalman filter, the AI technique to like reduce the errors and all that. We should go for a different type of oxygen analyzer to cross check, because you're checking same thing using the same type of sensor.
Yeah, so a couple of folks are working on it. We're trying to see if we can use ultrasonic sensors or maybe some other different way of measurement. But at this point, for every concentrator, the electrochemical cell is going to be the cheapest option, at least to have on board. we might have to have some kind of a gold standard for a different reason.
Initially, this is I'm talking initially
Yeah,
while we are in
so-
the prototype stage.
Yeah.
No,
But again, once you get into that territory, it's not going to be cheap. So we'll have to figure out a way where we can pool resources and do this in a more centralized manner, rather than everyone having to buy expensive equipment just to calibrate their devices. So uh, again, that is, I think, thoughts in progress as we go ahead. So if you have ideas on how we can achieve that, let's say, I think some lab in Pune has sort of agreed that they can certify oxygen concentrators. So let's see how that goes.
What is this? Which lab is it?
Swen conformity.
NABL.
No, it's not NABL. It's Swen conformity. They are
It's part
NABL
of NABL.
accredited. Yeah. So the guys in Pune are
also one more thing. Sorry to interrupt you guys. I shared those ISO certificates also and one video from ISO member that all the COVID resources are all free and I could guide you guys. Matlab, what we need to do is that we should also think in terms of certification and we should invert our thinking. We should just look at the certification and what all things they want, the technical things, and then we could incorporate that also into the design.
Yeah, so
rather
as
than-
of now the BIS has made a call for comments on their standards. They don't have anything at all in terms of concentrator certification because nobody used to make it over here until now. So they are doing some kind of fast tracking on that. They've called for public comments on it. I think some folks in the documentation and certification group are working on it. I don't have an up-to-date. Yeah, but I think Richa can tell us more on what's happening there.
No, you can say it's fine.
I need a drink of water. So.
Yeah, so on the certification quickly, so yeah, like BIS has opened up a consultation which is scheduled to close on the 12th of June, post which they will take a call on what are the certifications, regulations needed for oxygen concentrators because they were not made in India before. So the consultation is open for us to comment on as well. So they're calling in for that. Apart from that, of course, there's a basic document released like the WHO one by the government of India in terms of what are the things that should be there in the concentrator. Apart from that, we've also received a list of NABL accredited labs, which are a couple of them in across which I think in Delhi, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka and Telangana. There are, one second guys, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Telangana and Delhi, there are some one each NABL labs which can possibly do oxygen concentration calibration and testing, which I understand from the data that I've received, but I'll share all of this on the certification group today.
My main motive was regarding the engineering point of view, like all the advanced people can have a look at those designs also, so that while we are designing the setup, we can incorporate that as well.
Sure. If you can also sort of help summarize that, Abhimanyu, and share, that'll be really great. It's a very intense, or it can be like a summarized document kind of a thing where you can just put down some pointers for everybody, maybe.
All right.
Yeah,
sure.
that'll be great. Thank you. Okay, great. Yeah, I'm done. So I'm going to put back to Anul. Anyone? Okay, a couple of people.
Hands are up, so let's hear from them.
Okay, Ankit, you want to go? Can't hear you.
Now, hello.
Yes, now we can hear you.
Yeah. So, like Simran said, we are also using lithium grade zeolite, and it's about 1.4 kg per canister from AGC Chemicals. So, grade is very good. And for testing purposes, we are using a very dry air it's a 7 HP compressor, and we have a cooler in between, so there is no moisture. But still, we are not able to get more than 85% at 5 LPM. So we have copied the Oxykit design. I don't know what seems to be the problem. No, we are stuck.
Pressure are you working at?
Sorry?
What pressure are you working at?
The input pressure is max is 2.5 bar.
Maybe more.
You should probably increase that. And if you're using the halo from the Oxykit with the RFICs and all, maybe you should just eliminate all of that, I guess, and try it out.
So So you mean to say even during the PERT cycle, oxygen from tower A to tower B, that should also not go?
No, nothing. Just couple the two outputs and send them out to the search tank.
Okay. And at the output, are you using an NRV?
Not yet, but we plan to try it out tomorrow.
Okay. So through the YT junction, some oxygen might be going from tower A to tower B, right? During the PERT cycle.
Possible, yeah.
Okay. And apart from that, any other major modification that you guys did?
No, nothing else. We can just remove
What is the
all-
output pressure you're using at the low pressure regulator? What is the output pressure?
The pressure does not increase. It's at 0.
I think that's one of the possibly. Actually, this is one thing that I wanted to actually ask everybody. Is that again? So I took Anul's suggestion and put it through another flow restrictor to the oxygen. Again, so the oxygen value that I'm reading is directly proportional to the pressure of the output valve that is set. When I'm running the system, my output pressure regulator goes up maximum to about 2.5 bar, but I've set it up 1 bar. At 1 bar, I'm getting 96-97%. But if I lower the output pressure, again, the oxygen concentration also drops. What is the relationship between the oxygen concentration and the output pressure is what I'm wondering.
So, Vijay, I have been working about all these things. I have been trying a regression model wherein we can like match with the parameters and all those data. So it will be very helpful. Like if you guys can like set up Anul, Richa, all those documents. Like we need to have the updated data sheet so that we can come up with a sort of a clear-cut formula or a design so that we can tell we're using this. These are the parameters and all that. I would really want to work on that.
I mean, again, this is a medical grade sensor which is directly connected. I'm just wondering what is the ideal operating conditions under which the oxygen needs to be measured.
So, Vijay, going back to one of Ed's earliest videos where he showed a walkthrough of the system, he clearly shows that the main output is going through the main flow meter to the patient. And there is a T junction where you have a second flow meter which he had set to 0.15 LPM, which was in turn going to the oxygen sensor that he was using. I guess that is really the best way of measuring it. You have a bleed circuit which is tapped off from the main one and uses a small amount of the output flow rather than the full pressure coming from the search tank or what's going to the output.
That's what I did this morning, but it's sort of still behaving the same way. I mean, it didn't really make too much difference. Again, it sort of slowed down the sensing. The sensor sort of reacted a little slower to changes in pressure. But ultimately, again, the pressure is still sort of directly proportional. Sorry, the oxygen concentration is directly proportional to the pressure of the output.
One point here is for the sensors, what you're using oxygen sensors, what the NVTech technical team is telling is to keep it to the ambient pressure as much as possible. So not to put any pressure at all, to put the minimum pressure on the sensor, and then the LPM to keep it around 0.3 to 0.5. Even that they are telling it will be more.
Okay, I see. Okay, all right.
What they are suggesting, try to keep, as you spoke already, try to keep a bleed somewhere. Like it should not be at
so
dead end.
ambient
There is a
like
small bleed
1.01 bar that is ATM, right? Is that what they mentioned?
Yeah, no, pressure, what they told us to keep it ambient, but again at ambient pressure, there will not be any movement of this thing, right? So
Yeah, I mean, so if you pressure regulator, if you set it at ambient, basically turn it all the way down, you won't get any flow even.
Yeah, that is what.
If it's zero. So you need to open up the pressure regulator at the output, at least to some extent. Say if it's 1 bar, which is close to atmospheric pressure, 1.0, whatever. If you're measuring at that, then that makes sense.
But again at 0.5 to 0.3 LPM.
Smaller LPM.
Yeah, and again they asked you to put a bleed actually. It should not be a dead end line. That is, the line should not be a dead end to the sensor.
Okay, there should be a bleed. Okay, fine, understood.
What they are telling, already there is a small bleed inside the sensor itself.
So what we have done is we put a needle valve as the final element. So after the oxygen sensor, there's a needle valve, and we control a little bit of bleed through that. That's what we do.
Yeah, something like that.
Because
Okay, makes sense.
then is getting the full pressure that's coming into the system, right?
See, most of the professional ones, what I have noticed is they have restricted using the brass thing, whatever the intake is there only they have done the restricting. Like how we are using that 1.5 mm restrictor, they have made that in the brass itself so that like a higher pressure doesn't go in. That is what I feel like
That's
in the
interesting.
professional ones.
All right, that's interesting. I think one suggestion is maybe next week we should have a sort of a meetup, engineering meetup sometime during the daytime where we can go through our individual machines. So like Vijay can do his, I can do mine, and stuff. And
Yeah, that'd be
we
great.
can have a collective heads looking at each other's machines in real life to give a view. So maybe next week's call we should have it during the daytime.
Should we wait for Friday? Should we do it earlier?
Friday works, so maybe
Friday
earlier,
work.
whatever. We can
Maybe.
decide on the group in a day or two.
Yeah, okay. Okay, quick,
Priyank, you still have
Priyank,
something?
yeah. Priyank, go.
Yeah, I have just one question that you have tried with removing all the orifice and equalization and everything with lithium. Is it possible that you can check it with the sodium? Does it work or not?
Good question. We haven't tried it. Do you want to try it out and tell us whether it works or not?
We don't have. I don't have lithium. That's why. So you have a lithium, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So with lithium, we did try with the orifices and everything. I mean, it didn't work. That's why we removed.
So I can like dilute my lithium and try that out. No worries.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Let us know how that goes.
And one more suggestion regarding the exhaust, as Vijay said that there may be some effects of air if the oxygen concentrate is kept. There isn't silencers from Genetics that is a NRV in built, so it also works as a silencer for the exhaust, as well as there will be no air going inside the exhaust from that. So it's an NRV come silencer. I have the part number if you can use it.
Yeah, good idea, because in storage that will help with preventing air going into the zeolite.
Yeah, so it will help in both the ways. It will just lower the noise levels, as well as the NRV will stop the air from coming in to the zeolite when it's stopped.
Okay, point taken. Who else? Vivian, still something?
Yeah, I was just listening to that conversation regarding the biofilter, basically for bacteria, virus, and fungal. There is something called a phototherapy device, which is used in European countries for treatment of fungal and bacterial and viral infections. This is mainly used for an external application. It's not used for internal applications. It is nothing but an LED light between 400 and 480 nanometers.
So
it's not UV. It's not UV. It is something in the visible spectrum.
Near UV.
Yeah, near UV. Yes.
Okay.
So something like that, if it is included in the oxygen path, I think it will help to because see these units will be kept in hospitals where there are COVID patients. So the air itself would be having the virus.
Good.
So if we can include something in that which would kill the virus before it reaches the patient, I think it would be a better idea.
We were thinking of doing a UV sanitization of the in the bubbler chamber, in the humidifier. But I think that's kind of similar to what you're describing. So we should probably look at that as well.
Okay.
So the logic behind
I have some documents on the study of phototherapy.
So
all these lights.
Vijay, Faisal's design, can we add something like this and make it a more self-contained unit which also does disinfection?
Yeah,
we can exactly, that's a good idea. I mean, the main thing is how much I mean, like Vivian said, if he has some documentation of what is the lighting, what are the
just 1 minute. I'll show you a device which I have with me.
So till then, I can tell you a brief how it exactly kills the bacteria and the viruses. So the wavelength of the light that we are sending, it matches the frequency of that of, like, for coronavirus, we have UVC, and for like any bacteria or fungal, we have those wavelength of lights, and we send them at that frequency. So the bacteria or that any material gets killed and all that.
Yeah, see, I was just flashing this light around. This is the device which I have. This is basically used for, it's been tested on COVID patients. It's from a company in Germany. And what they found was, so tested during the first wave. What they found was, like, within 3 days, the patients were back to normal, and they tested negative. So this device had to be put inside the mouth and then kept for 15 minutes for twice a day. And in that, the clinical trials were going on, and I believe it's still going on in India. So that is when I learned about this particular wavelength of light, and how it helps in the whole thing.
So is it battery operated, and how long does it last?
This unit is battery operated. One charge, I have used it for, like, 25-30 times. It really helps when you have a sore throat or a sinus infection and all that. It really helps. So I have the sample unit with me. I use it all the time.
Can you post a link again somewhere so we can all take a look?
I will do that. Definitely, I'll do that.
Sounds so interesting.
Yeah, sounds pretty exciting. I need one.
Yeah, one point I would like to add is that UV radiation, when it interacts with oxygen, right, it might create ozone, like, so you have to be careful that way, like.
Yeah, UV, that is a problem with UV, but this is not UV. This is visible light.
Yeah. So UV,
which is before the UV, this one.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Karan, go ahead.
Hi, Vivian, I want to ask one question about that LCD we were talking about. Have you tried with 128/64 LCD that we use in 3D printers?
Yeah, so again, I had written something about the LCDs. Again, there's a company called WinStar. I think it's a Taiwanese company or a Chinese company, I'm not sure, but they make large size OLED displays. Slightly expensive, but again, those are the only guys who are affordable to buy OLED displays. I have a feeling the JLCPC might also have them in their local bomb, whatever. So just check out WinStar. But yeah, 3D printed display, using that was also one of the things that we wanted to do. But ultimately, we just used a 16:2 display over I2C because it's simple and big enough. And again, just for the time being, but we're not really finalized on a display.
Okay, let us
Yeah, see, like, to come back to Karan's question, that's the exact display which I have tried it, and I have put it on the list at the moment. But
okay, 124/64 with that memory card and all.
That's what I have put in.
Yes, because why I thought about that is it's readily available on Amazon for like 800 or 700 bucks. And more advantages, you get one buzzer over there, one rotary encoder is there, so we can make those things use.
Yes, I have included a rotary encoder, and I have included a buzzer on the board.
Karan, quickly.
But that is readily available, I guess.
Oh, this unit comes with the rotary encoder and this one. That's what you mean.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
I will show
and
you.
What's the communication for that?
Look.
Okay.
So can you see this screen?
Yeah, I can.
I'm talking about this. RipRap 1.4 RAMs, 128/64 LCD.
Okay,
there's
but
one
what's
buzzer,
the
rotary encoder, and interface. I'm not sure about that. I'm not an electronics guy, but that's pretty much open source.
Yeah, so the interface
is open source. Just
talks to the rotary encoder, and the buzzer talks over normal GPIOs. The display talks over
right.
It basically has
I2C.
a MCP, your microchip I2C backpack, and that is how it's talking to the LCD.
So is it a UART?
Even the library is open source.
I2C again. So
I2C, okay.
The library for this, you'll find this is what is properly used in all your 3D printers. So it's pretty straightforward to interface this. Again, you can just sort of take it out from the code that is being used on 3D printers. Again, very,
Okay,
very.
that's interesting, because if that is the case, then I can definitely look at giving that up. Anul, are you okay with that?
Sorry, I missed. We were in a separate side discussion here, but come again quickly. What was it?
Basically, the display which is used in 3D printers, it
Yeah.
comes with a built-in rotary
Sure.
encoder
Coder.
and a buzzer.
Perfect. That will be perfect.
Yeah, I think, and I believe it works on I2C. So
Ah.
then it's straightforward. We can have
Yeah,
that.
yeah, so nothing to worry. I mean, he's a 3D guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not OLED. It's not
Free
OLED
India's
display. It is it's
Free
just a
LED
128
for everyone.
64.
It's LCD. If you can see the screen, I'm showing you the image.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, I have a
Yeah,
couple of
this is
these
128 by
stock, I can send it to
64
you.
LCD screen with around size is around 3.2 inches.
Oh,
And the buzzer and rotary encoder is already on board, so we don't have to put anything extra. This thing is readily available on Amazon and all for 700 rupees.
Let's
So
do
that's second problem we are facing right now. We are not able to source the parts perfectly and in large quantity. So that's not the problem here.
Vijay will
So
manage that.
I just wanted to make this suggestion. Just
Vijay
please
can
go through it.
sponsor that for everyone. Sponsored by Octoworks.
And how many ever I have in stock? I do have a few, but
Okay, I'm putting down my hand.
I'm putting down.
Okay, Karan, any lithium for us?
Yeah. Any? Have you shipped our zeolite, by the way?
By tomorrow, because I just got one ad call from that BKM guy that is not available at the moment, and I don't know what to do. He is going to call me tomorrow morning for the update. Meanwhile, if there is any urgency, I will ship you my material. So I already have 10 kilo in spare.
Okay, yeah, that'll be great. If you
Okay,
can.
okay. Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank
I will
you.
try my best to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, last
Last two questions.
last two, I'm going to wrap it up because we have to leave as well. We have a
Yeah.
couple more calls actually tonight, so till about 12 in the night. So just want to quickly close on this. Okay, last I'll let Ankit go quickly, and then Vinod, and then
So regarding the compressor, you said that 200 to 300 LPM. So what's the pressure rating? At what pressure should that be?
I think
200 to 300 is in free air.
So
yeah, actually, Vijay, what do you mean by that? 300 is in free air. I mean, what is?
I was talking to the William chap, the guy, that Oxykit guy who's supplying the compressors.
Yeah.
So the 300 specification isn't free air, and there's that the data sheet and documentation isn't that great to say how much, what is the LPM at what pressure. But all I know is that 300 LPM is in free air.
Yeah,
can you guys share which companies compressor you guys are using?
So the thing with compressors, or rather pressure and flow, is they are kind of closely related. Like you have flow when a system is open, but your pressure when the system is closed. So you get 8 bar pressure when there is no flow in the compressor. You get 300 LPM when there is absolutely no, let's say, restriction on the output. So I think there's a relationship in that case. But anyway, to answer the question on the compressor rating, I think 200 to 300 LPM in free air at about 6 bar is good enough.
okay, great. Vinod, do you want to go next?
Yeah, this is regarding the humidity actually. Like whoever is using the silica gel, one small this thing is, if you can get a 10-inch transparent pre-filter housing, that will be very helpful for you to know like when it has saturated because of the color change.
Nice.
Okay.
And whoever is going for like this thing refrigerant based dryer model or anything, you can make a small like a transparent tube or something canister like that, where you can fill the silica, which will be inline, so that you'll know like when your dryer is working or that it is not working kind of. It will be like an indicator kind of thing.
Yes, sir.
Sure. Okay, last, thanks Vinod for that. Last, Mohammed, you want to just go before I close it?
Yeah, thank you so much. Actually, I just wanted to confirm, like, you will be sharing the BOM hard soft copy in the group or something.
Yeah, we will be working on it. Unfortunately, it's just a work in progress. We just trying to finish with some images and stuff but just trying to get that in order. So give us a day or so.
So
That will help, very helpful.
advantage of being in Goa is that we have frequent power cuts.
Yeah.
So that kind of pushes back our schedules quite a lot every day,
Yeah.
unfortunately. We're trying our best we can.
Yeah, we're trying to push it, but it's almost ready, the bomb, at least for the new design that we have. And yeah, we're trying to push it. So hopefully tomorrow we should be able to get somewhere, or maximum by Sunday, if we should have it at least.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That will be very helpful.
All right, perfect. Thank you everyone for joining. I'm going to call it a night. Great progress from everyone. Congratulations, and we will speak soon. Bye.
Good night, all.
Bye, good night.
Night.
Good night.
Good night.